I think ACOTAR is extremely overrated. Hi, I'm Elle. This is my first video essay ever. I have my tiny mic. I have my script. Let's go. Over the past 2 weeks, I have read every single ACOTAR book back to back in full. I've read all these books before in middle school, which is another problem about why these books are in the hands of children when they are definitely not safe for them. I, to be honest, couldn't really remember a lot. For the purposes of this video, I wanted to reread all of them to have a definite grasp on the books and be able to talk about them in depth. This book series has obviously become very, very big in the fantasy world. People don't just like these books, they become people's whole lives. People name their pets after these books, they tattoo these books. There was literally a girl who got Tamlin's name tattooed on the back of her ankle, I think, after only reading the first book, which, if you know, is not ideal, and everyone is like severely judging her for it. I'm severely judging her for it, but we'll get into that. People describe Rhysand, I hope I'm saying that right, as the standard that every real male should be. I think I'm about to reread the greatest romantasy, fantasy, whatever you want to call it, ever written. I just don't think it's very good. And somehow the only book I liked the most is the 5th book, A Court of Silver Flame. Half the fandom is divided on whether they really like it or not because it doesn't focus on the two main characters of the other books, Feyre and Rhysand. It's on Nesta, Feyre's sister, and Cassian? I'm gonna say Cassian. Please tell me if I'm saying it wrong. I'm gonna talk about why the book series doesn't work for me and why I think book 5 fixes most of what she did. But before you come for me, this is my opinion. If ACOTAR is your favorite series in the world and you have Tamlin tattooed on your ankle, you go. People are allowed to love what they want to love. I wish I had that experience. I just didn't. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't read ACOTAR, read it all, unless you don't care. And then come back and like my video. The ACOTAR phenomenon. The main thing that interested me about ACOTAR isn't just the books, it's the fandom as well. If you've spent any time on TikTok between 2020 and now, you've probably heard someone screaming about Chapter 55. Rhysand edits have millions upon millions of views. People argue over Tamlin like he's someone's ex-boyfriend. Entire businesses exist simply to sell ACOTAR merch. So I kept waiting and waiting to understand the obsession. And partly I do. I love fantasy. I'll always love fantasy. But that big obsession moment never really came. Here is my biggest problem and critique, if you will. Most of the characters don't feel like characters. Stay with me here. They feel like fantasies, if that makes sense. Rhysand isn't written like a man. He's written like a Tumblr post, like some girl logging onto Tumblr and be like, here's my perfect man, because he just does everything right. Except for in book 5, but we'll get to that. But he just does everything right. He is powerful, he's rich, he's the perfect mate. Maybe get me started on the mate stuff. He's morally gray, except for when the plot decides he isn't morally gray. He's always right, he's the most beautiful male alive, and everybody loves him. Every single criticism of him eventually gets explained away, and that is not a character, in my opinion. That is wish fulfillment. The same can go for Feyre too. She's not really a character, she's more of a vehicle for the reader. Instead of growing through her mistakes and maturing, even though she does overcome a lot, she kind of just gets more and more powerful until she's just correct. Contrast that with Nesta. Well, we'll get there. Let's dive into a little of the problem with Sarah J. Maas. Her pacing. I've never met an author who can make 150 pages seem like 500 and then somehow cram an entire war into the last 50 pages. Here's how every single book goes. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. Romance! Nothing happens. Massive lore dump. World-ending battle. The end. The emotional payoff usually does pay off, but the plotting doesn't really work. It's impossible to talk about ACOTAR without talking about Sarah J. Maas herself. Over the years, she has faced a huge criticism in her lack of diversity, for the way some marginalized characters are written, and for the controversy surrounding an Instagram post where she used Breonna Taylor to promote the sales of her new book. She apologized, but whether any of that affects your decision to read her work is your personal choice. I'm not telling anyone what they should do. but I do think it is important context when discussing one of the biggest authors in fantasy writing today. Let's talk about Tamlin. He didn't become a villain, he was rewritten into a villain. He absolutely makes tons of mistakes. He's controlling, he's traumatized, he's possessive. None of that is good. But book 2 feels less of a continuation of his character and more like Sarah J. Maas wanted Rhysand to be the love interest, which is what she did. There's an interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast where Sarah J. Maas says she did not plan Rhysand. She was writing Tamlin and she was like, oh, it's this Beauty and the Beast character. And then Rhysand came in and I go, well, now he has to be the love interest, something along the lines of that. But basically, she just took Tamlin and kicked him out the window. It's not character development, it's character replacement. I mean, I get having characters drive your plot, like having the love interest just not be the love interest anymore, but it just felt so messy. It was genuine whiplash. Because Feyre literally goes down under the mountain to save Tamlin, the love of her life. Also, am I pronouncing Tamlin right? I don't know. And then, all of a sudden, she's in love with Rhysand? Okay. This also isn't me excusing Tamlin's behavior, this is just a point I wanted to make. The stakes. The stakes never feel real, ever. Sarah J. Maas loves dramatic deaths, like, loves them. But she just doesn't, she doesn't love keeping people dead when she kills them. By the third or fourth miraculous revival, I was like, okay. Right. And maybe this is me just hating, and that's okay. Call me out on it. But but Feyre getting brought back to life by all of the High Lords and then having all of their powers, to me that's reminiscent of when you write an OC and you give them all the powers because you can't decide. Like when you were little and playing mermaids at the pool and you gave yourself a rainbow tail because you had all the powers. And then book 5 happened. I was fully expecting to not like this. It's the only book I felt had genuine character writing that was compelling to me. Because for the first time, Sarah J. Maas let someone stay unlikable. Nesta isn't immediately forgiven. She isn't secretly perfect. She doesn't instantly become lovable. She's angry, she's cruel, she's self-destructing, she's embarrassing, she's mean, she's depressed, she's pushing away the people trying to help her. And the book doesn't ask you to excuse any of it like you do with the others. It asks you to go with it with her. It asks you to understand it, and that to me is a huge difference. Her friendships with Gwen and, I'm gonna say it wrong, Emiri? I don't know. She was my favorite character by far in the book, by the way. They ended up being more emotionally satisfying than any of the other relationships she has, or any of the other relationships in the original trilogy. For the first time, it felt like characters instead of fantasies, if that makes sense. So why is ACOTAR so popular? Here is my theory. People don't love ACOTAR because it's the best written fantasy series, but they love it because Sarah J. Maas gives them emotional payoff. She knows how to write yearning. She knows how to write temptation. She knows how to write romantic tension. She knows how to give readers exactly what they've been waiting 500 or more pages for. And sometimes that's enough, even if the plotting falls apart, if the world building is inconsistent. That's why millions of people love these books. Overall point I want to make with this part of the video is that ACOTAR is written to maximize emotional gratification rather than literary cohesion. In other words, every single decision prioritizes making the readers feel something. Whether it's swooning over Rhysand, hating Tamlin, or cheering for Feyre, sometimes even at the expense of a clear, consistent character. Now, I'm going to go book by book. Let's start with the book that almost made me quit the series, which is book 1. The beginning is basically Beauty and the Beast, but with fairies, which is fine. Everyone loves a good fairy tale retelling. I just think it's really funny that the girl who's supposed to play Belle, Feyre is supposed to be Belle, she can't read. She doesn't even get to learn to read until the second book, when a man has to teach her. But whatever. The pacing is so slow. Feyre is so reactive. The world building is vague. It's so vague. I try. But it is. I never felt like I understood the rules or the stakes or anything. It felt like all the characters knew this information that the reader wasn't allowed to know because you needed to save it for the end. for when all that lore comes out at once. I would prefer the lore to be like sprinkled in as we go along, but no, it just bam, bam, gets in your face. And then we get to Under the Mountain, which is my favorite part by far. The book wakes up, the trials are interesting. Amarantha, I hope I'm saying that right, is actually interesting. And then Rhysand shows up. I don't even think he's at his best here, but he injects so much of his personality into the ending that I get why readers wanted more of him. The frustrating part is that it takes 300 pages to get there. I appreciate this book more in hindsight than I did when reading it, so if someone told me that they DNF'd it because of book 1, I would not blame them. This is the fan favorite, and I totally understand why. It's addictive. The writing is addictive. The romance is addictive. The tension is addictive. The chemistry with Feyre and Rhysand is so much stronger than anything that happened with Tamlin. And watching Feyre recover from what happened under the mountain is some of Sarah J. Maas's strongest writing, I think, in this book at least. But I think this is also where the cracks in the series kind of become impossible to ignore. Because Tamlin doesn't become a different partner, he becomes a different person. Again, it's like halfway through, Sarah J. Maas wanted Rhys to be the love interest, so she just hit the make Tamlin awful button. Could Tamlin have been abusive naturally because of his trauma? Of course, but that is not what this was. This book was great. Good thing I will say about the ending is that I love when books have the last line of the book set up for like a sequel or a third book. And I hate when they don't do it successfully, but the last line of this book, which is, so Tamlin unwittingly led the High Lady of the Night Court into the heart of his territory. It's just so smart, because you're like, oh my god, I can't wait for book 3, what's gonna happen next, etc. Book 3, ignore that this is not the pink cover. It's really old. It bothers me I don't have the pink cover, but whatever. This is where ACOTAR becomes an Avengers movie. I kid you not, I was reading the ending on the plane where everyone comes in, and I started laughing because it just reminds me of that point in Endgame where all of the characters come in and like all of the portals open and everyone's there, and I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god. Every single court is involved in this book. There are political alliances, wars, ancient magic, huge battles, and somehow I was not stressed once. As a person who gets stressed very easily, I expected to be like gnawing at the bars of my enclosure, terrified. Because by this point I realized Sarah J. Maas doesn't really kill off major characters, and they all have plot armor, which I was right about because because Rhysand literally dies at the end of this and he gets brought back to life, whatever. So I'm like, if a character dies, don't fret, they will be back. Like the Terminator, I'll be back. But the battle scenes are fun, and the emotional speeches do work. But when every single impossible situation has a miraculous solution, it's hard to stay invested. The stakes stop feeling real. This isn't a novel, it's a Hallmark Christmas special. Don't even mean that as an insult. Everyone is shopping, there's decorating, it's the winter solstice, which is like their version of like the winter holidays, and everyone is healing and buying each other presents and drinking hot cocoa and talking about how they're mates. I think if I was given $1 for every single time the word mate is used in this book, I would be comfortable to live for the rest of my life. If you wanted to desperately spend more time with these characters being happy, you'll enjoy it. It's kind of just like a slice of life, almost like a beach episode, but in the winter. I just kept waiting for something to happen, and nothing really happened. It exists to bridge the gap between book 3 and book 5. It's fine, it's there. It's a quick read. I mean, I wasn't complaining. It quickly counted for my Goodreads reading goal. This is definitely by far my favorite. Not because I suddenly thought that Sarah J. Maas fixed every single issue within the series. She did not. The pacing is still uneven. The fantasy plot takes a backseat to the romance. The magical lore feels like it's being invented on the fly. But again, this is the first book where people actually feel like people. Nesta is allowed to be difficult. She's allowed to be angry. She's allowed to hurt people. And most importantly, she has to earn her healing. I also felt like we lost Rhysand's character a little bit. TLDR, Feyre gets pregnant. Big surprise. They're literally having every single millisecond. But the problem is that when she was in like her Illyrian form, with the wind, the baby, and the baby has wings and her can't fit the wings through it, and she could die. Don't even get me started on how Feyre like cosplays Illyrian woman, which really, really ticks me off because Illyrian women face so much sexism and so much prejudice, and she's just cosplaying for the fun of it. But instead of telling her that she's gonna die, Rhysand, her mate, the love of her life, the person who's supposed to tell her everything, just hides it from her. They all hide it from her. Nesta has to tell her, which is so insane to me. But whatever. I feel like that's the catchphrase of this video, but whatever. Because that's all you can really say when it comes to the ACOTAR books, but whatever. Book 5 is the only book that made me forget I was reading ACOTAR. So after nearly 4,000 pages, do I think ACOTAR deserves all the hype? No. Like I said, it's overrated. I don't think it's this revolutionary fantasy masterpiece that all of Book Talk is talking about. I get why millions of readers fell in love with it. Because Sarah J. Maas makes you feel. She knows how to make you desperate for the next chapter, and objectively, that is a skill. A different skill than writing airtight plots or intricate fantasy worlds, but a skill nonetheless. So yes, I will probably read book 6 when it comes out. And by she I mean Sarah J. Maas. Sarah, if you will, my close and personal friend. She proved that she can write emotionally compelling stories. I just wish it hadn't taken her 4 whole books to get there. And those are my opinions on the ACOTAR books. I would desperately want to make a more in-depth video essay about the different types of sexism that is faced, and specifically how Sarah J. Maas writes her BIPOC characters as not great. But this is my first video essay ever, and I'm learning. If you enjoyed this, please tell me if you want to hear me talk about any other books. I have a lot of books, if you can tell, and I love talking about them, and I love reading them, and I love everything that has to do with books. So if you like this, please let me know, because I want to make more. I can never shut up about books, but thank you. Bye!